and welcome everyone. My name is Stephen Goldberg, bringing you practical tips on leadership, team development, and employee performance in the workplace. And today we're going to be talking about sales. So salespeople are employees as well. Even if you're working on a commission basis, you're still an employee and you still got to perform. And I'm glad to have as my guest Allan Langer, who's a specialist in sales, helping companies build their sales teams, their sales performance, and the author of a best-selling book which won a bronze medal in 2019 as top sales book of the year. Maybe Allan, just introduce yourself a little bit. What's your background? How did you come to be doing what you're doing today? And tell us a little bit about the book as well.
Sure. Thanks for having me on, Stephen. Yeah, I've been in sales for about 25, a little over 25 years now. Um, Done everything from B2C, B2B. I actually cut my teeth in the in-home selling industry where I started selling sunrooms. Then I went on to B2B sales where I was selling for a general contractor and selling large construction jobs, and then eventually ended up at Anderson Windows, which is the one of the largest window companies in the world, and was their top sales rep for many years, and decided to write a book about it. Because I started to get much better at sales when I stopped listening to the corporate sales training process that they always tried to get everyone to follow. And I understand that there needs to be a process, but the process was broken from the beginning. And when I started to sort of leave that behind and do some things that I thought were going to be more helpful, that's when my sales started to skyrocket. I wrote a book about it. The book became a bestseller in 2019, and then I started my training company, which is the Seven Secret Sales Academy. And the book, which is behind me right up there, um, was a bestseller on Amazon for about 4 months in the summer of 2019. So it's it was the catalyst to get me to what I'm doing now, which I absolutely love. I love helping sales people and companies grow their sales in an honest and human way rather than the typical high pressure sales that people are mostly trained.
Fantastic. So, yeah, I have a background in sales. My dad was an entrepreneur and started a auto parts distribution business, which he grew quite well. And I worked from the bottom up and eventually went on to sales. And my sales training was, here's a car, uh, you have your license, go out and make some money.
That
Oh,
is
and by
still
the
some of the
way,
sales
go
training
with
that's out
this
there.
guy for a few weeks because he's our top salesman. But
Right,
that
exactly.
was the extent of my sales training. So and later on, I figured out that I better learn some processes.
Right,
So I love learning, and that's what really helped me. But I was pretty good at it because I learned from my dad, who used to take me with him on Saturday mornings when he was actually a salesman working for a company. And I learned sales just from watching him. And the key thing was just being consistent and,
hmm
really working hard. And that's what he taught me. But all the sales process and everything I had to go out and learn on my own. So
right.
you said something there which was very interesting that you learned, you were trained by the corporate sales training and you figured out that didn't work. So you developed your own approach and that's when your sales skyrocketed. So tell us about that. What was it in the corporate quote sales training approach that you saw that wasn't working that you needed to fix so that you could actually become a good salesperson?
Well, corporate sales training, and thank goodness it's getting a little better, but obviously it's built for the masses. It's built to train a lot of people, people coming and going. And it's very generic and it's very process filled. And I'm not saying that's a bad thing. You do need to have some sort of a process, but there was very little room or very little ability to take your own personality and what makes you a unique human, and apply that to your conversation. The typical corporate sales training is like giving everyone the same medicine when they go into an emergency room. It's like, here you go, here's what you need to do in front of every single person. And that just doesn't work anymore. As humans evolved, even from the 50s, 60s, 70s up until now, human beings have completely changed, and so has the sales process. But what you've seen is these old time sales strategies and tactics that they can't even listen to anymore, let alone buy something. And if you still are going by these systems that are A, B, C, D, like always be closing, what's his name from Glengarry Glen Ross. If you follow those types of processes as if you're talking to a human being the same way every time, you're going to be a very mediocre salesperson. Today's salesperson has to be nimble, has to be quick on their feet. They have to realize that the consumer has probably more information than they do. And how are they going to handle that? As soon as the internet came out, sales changed forever. I always went during my training courses and things that I talk about. I always say before the internet, the salesperson was in charge. Because as the consumer, that's where you got your information from, the salesperson, or maybe an advertisement or a magazine. But other than that, you had to listen to the salesperson. Now it's completely flipped on its ear. So now, as a salesperson, if you don't think that customer researched you and checked you out and looked at Google reviews, you're sorely mistaken. So sales has completely changed from, a process driven, I have to cover all of these points, to a human driven cycle that what is going to make this person like me and do business with me from an emotional standpoint.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I actually learned through sales training was, all things being equal, people would rather do business with those they like and trust rather than perhaps the best price. So
Right.
you have to, I guess, build that relationship and show that you're trustworthy. But not only that you're trustworthy, that, trust exists on many levels with the product, with perhaps the after sales service. There's a lot of things that people may be concerned about that if you as a salesperson haven't explored with them, how do you build that trust so they feel they're making the right decision, right?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, trust will always be there. It's just a matter of now how it's delivered. Because prior to the internet and older types of sales training, people would build trust just from features and benefits. Just like take a look at how great this product is. It's going to be great for you. And they didn't really need to like the salesman as much. Now there's so many great products and so many great services. Um, you need to build trust in many different silos, like you said, and from the company to you to the product to social proof to testimonials. All of these different things have to add up to a customer really feeling. I like to say it's got to be a comfort level. An uncomfortable customer is never going to buy from you, even if it's a very slight feeling of discomfort or a slight feeling of I'm not sure I want to buy because of something you did. They're not going to buy. The old expression, a confused mind never buys, and an uncomfortable customer never buys.
So maybe walk us through a little bit about how you approach sales. How do you work with salespeople to get them to shift away from being just like a recipe-driven process to one that's more human, that's more geared on uh, the needs of the buyer?
Yeah, so the way I developed the seven secrets, it's not a process per se, but there are strategies to use during the conversation when you think that they're needed. So here's a great example is I literally got off the phone right before I sat down with you with a gentleman in the UK. And I said, just tell me about what you do. He sells a product. He goes into homes and sells it to homeowners. And I said, tell me what you do. And he literally spent 10 minutes going over, this is what I do first. This is what I do second. This is what I do third. This is what I do fourth. And I stopped him midway through and I said, Joe, if you did that, if you were on the receiving end of what you're just saying, how would you feel? And he never thought about that. He goes, oh, I feel like I'm getting a sales pitch. Exactly. You sound like a typical salesperson. Stop. I just tell reps, if you meet someone, don't start in with, you know, silly questions or like, how are you or small talk. You just basically say, how can I help you? Why did you call me today? And then shut up. They'll tell you in the first sentence why you're there and kind of let them guide the conversation. They want to tell you what's wrong and they want to be heard and listened to. So, huge key takeaway is use open-ended questions. We hear about this all the time, but so many reps don't use it. So many reps use closed-ended questions. Ask open-ended questions. Tell me, after they tell you a problem, here's my problem, my roof is leaking. Instead of saying, great, well, we've got great shingles and a great installation team and we start selling right away. Don't sell right away. Say, well, tell me how that's affecting your house. Now they'll tell you, oh, well, it's leaking in my kitchen and I can't cook. Wow, how has that affected dinner time? And you just keep digging and digging. And at some point, they're going to be like, man, this guy's really asking me these great questions. Okay, sell me. Now I'm ready for you to show me how you're going to solve my problem. Rather than, oh, let me sell right away because you told me the problem and I have the solution.
Okay. So it's really about showing the person that you're interested in their problem and you want to understand it better before just proposing something.
Exactly. Most sales reps, if people ask me what's one of the biggest issues with sales reps, I would say top three, they sell too fast. As
Mhm.
soon as a sales rep hears the problem, they want to offer the solution immediately instead of asking more questions.
Yeah, because they know they have a solution and
Right, exactly.
let's get going, let's make the sale and but it doesn't work that way, like you say. You need to stop because they have so many options, right? And how do you differentiate between like one roofer to another unless you have to feel that they have your needs and interests ahead, so they're not there to just sell you, shoddy workmanship or whatever. So you need to feel confident. And I guess asking questions and showing that you're listening is a great way to do that.
Right. And when they're making a decision, they're going to have a comfort level with you and they may not even know why, but the subconscious reason is you dug in, you asked a lot of questions, which really increased their comfort level as opposed to the roofer that just gave the solution and a price.
Now, we closing is always something that the business owner or the sales manager, sales director wants to see happening. Of course, if you don't close the sale, then you got to find another prospect. And so your closing ratio may not be so great and you won't make your commissions or whatever. So, in your approach, how do you know when the right time is to close and how do you do it?
So closing is one of those sales terms that is it's such a nebulous term because everybody wants to know how to do it because they think there's a magic bullet.
Right.
And I'm here to tell you there is no magic bullet to closing. Closing is if you have a good sales conversation where the customer feels heard and understood, the closing is should be a natural continuation of the conversation. It should just be the culmination of the conversation. When you put that price down, and there's obviously that's a huge factor on how you present the price and get the customer ready for the price. But when you put that price down, they should be so comfortable and so expecting of that price that they should say, wow, that looks good to me. And then you simply say, great, how do you want to pay for this?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be like use this clothes or use the puppy dog clothes or use the porch light clothes, use all these silly things. In my book, I have 75 closing techniques that are just on the internet that people like, you can look up. And the problem is if you're focusing on how I'm going to close the customer, you miss the entire conversation. You're not going to close them anyway. It's the same thing. It's in the same category as objection handling. Oh my God, how do I handle objections? Well, you handle objections by not getting them in the first place. That's how you handle objections. You have really good conversations, and the more questions you ask, the fewer objections you're going to get. So I've never really had a concrete answer like, okay, how do I close? I say you close by having a really good sales conversation, and it just becomes the culmination of that conversation.
But how do you know when the prospect is actually ready to buy?
It
Like, how
depends
do
on if
you,
you're, I mean, if you're B2B, then you got to see what their sales buying process is. You know, if you're enterprise sales, it could be, up to 18 months. If you're SaaS software, it could be 3 months. You got to know, you got to understand their process, and you do that by making sure you got the decision makers that having a conversation with the right people. One of the worst things you can do as a salesperson is spend 3 months talking to the wrong person, and then you got to start all over again. So really know upfront who you're speaking to and what their sales process is as far as purchasing. But if you're in a consumer situation where you're selling to a homeowner or even retail, that's an immediate thing. You're gonna sell that day, and that's where I have a whole chapter on body language. Watch their body language. What's their nonverbal communication telling you? That'll tell you right away whether they're uncomfortable, anxious, enjoying what they're hearing, and then there'll be body language that's accepting that they're ready to move forward, especially after you show the price.
you mentioned a couple of things I just want to go back to. You mentioned B2B sales. You have to understand their process. And then you also mentioned, about observing the person, their body language, how are they reacting. So, more and more companies make decisions as teams, right?
Right,
So you have to have the key decision makers there, but there's also influencers that can influence the decision makers. So you got to actually win everybody over. But
right.
it's even the same, like if you're selling a home improvement product to a consumer, you got to know who's in going to be making the decision. If is it the couple, that's usually the case. So how do you make sure that you've covered all your bases and you're actually talking to the right people? Because I've made that mistake in the past. I've lost a lot of time selling to a person that didn't have the power to make a decision.
Well, there's a way when I train B2B sales and you're on that initial conversation, it's before you get to the initial conversation. Let's just say you're talking to I'll use myself for an example. I do training and coaching and workshops. So every now and then a good portion of my sales calls will be with HR people, directors of HR, directors of learning and development for companies. But you said a very good point. Most of the time, those people are influencers. They're not decision makers. So they want my stuff. They think it's needed for the company, but they have to convince the financial officer and the CEO to spend the money to hire me. So what I would do is instead of just saying, let's have a meeting with Joe Smith, the HR director, as I'm speaking with Joe Smith or emailing, I would say, who else do you think would benefit from being as part to get some information to be on this meeting? You don't want to say who else will be the decision makers or who else should be there to help make the decision. That's going to put them in a very defensive mode. I always use the sentence, who else would benefit from hearing this information? And then he would say, well, you know what? Our CFO probably would want to hear this because he's going to be paying for it. Boom, now I know who the decision maker is. And quite often that person will be on the call, but if they're not, at least I know who I need to get on a future call. So that's how I handle the B2B section is who do you think would benefit from hearing this situation? And then the B2C, it's the same thing, if someone calls you, like the appointments for us when we went out, they were set up for us. So they would always ask if both homeowners were going to be there. But from a homeowner standpoint, who else needs to make some decisions on the details of your roof, the colors, the shape, the windows, who's going to be there to choose the grids and the hardware and things like that. And they'll know that both people need to be there.
So the bottom line though is you gotta know who else is going to be making the decision or being a strong influencer, and make sure that you can get in front of them if you want to be able to make that sale.
No, 100%. Yeah. Otherwise, you're just wasting your time. One of the worst things you could do, and this happened to me, is like like say in consumer sales, I'd go to a house and I'd spend an hour and a half talking to a couple, a young couple, and then at the end they say, "Okay, well, my mother owns the house; she's going to make the decision." And you're like, "What? I just wasted an hour and a half.
Yeah.
That was my fault."
So what did you do?
I came back and did another hour and a half for the mother.
Uh, well, it's fortunate you were able to do that.
Yeah,
And did
exactly.
you
So
make
you
the
just
sale?
I made the sell, yes.
Oh,
Because
good.
obviously if you get the influencer, it's easier when the influencer wants your stuff because they're going to influence the decision maker. They're going to say, we really need to hire this guy. But you still need to have your stuff. See, the other thing, don't ever assume that whatever you tell to an influencer or someone who's not a decision maker, don't assume that that exact information is going to get to the decision maker. Quite often, that information is skewed or misrepresented, or they completely say the wrong things, and then you don't make the sale. That's why you have to talk to the decision maker because it's like the telephone game. You say one thing to another person, and by the time it gets to the end, the information is completely wrong. If you think your information is going to be the same from the influencer to the decision maker, it won't be. So don't make that mistake either.
Yeah. And it just brings up a experience I had where I had a cousin working for a company that's located here, and I wanted to sell them some of my tools. And the VP put me onto this other fellow. And after months of uh, discussing with him, uh, I found out that they had no intention of buying from me at all, because the VP was just putting me off to this guy so he didn't have to spend time and say no to me. And
That
that
must
was
have made you
quite an
feel great.
awakening. you know. So, because also, people lie, right? They lie about what they're capable of doing as far as making a decision because they want to save
Hmm.
face or they want to look good or whatever. So it's a tricky situation, I find.
That's where some micro expressions and body language come in handy when you ask a direct question about, decision makers and they lie. They could show you something like
Right.
scratching their nose or looking a certain way that might make you dig a little deeper on that.
So what are some of those body language indicators? Like, for example, let's say you were selling a roof, and you had a couple in front of you, they're the decision makers, but one of them is maybe leaning in, seems their eyes are brightening, they can imagine stopping the leak or whatever the problem, and the other one is not engaged in the same way. What signs would you look for to know if the person's not on board, if you're selling to a couple or a group?
Well, I mean, I mean, that would be, another whole podcast episode, but there are some micro expressions that obviously if you lose someone, they may look, it's called looking askance. They may look up to the left or glance somewhere else in the middle of a sentence. That means whatever you're saying, they're not paying attention to anymore.
Okay.
Um, they may do something like this, rub the back of their neck. That's a pacifying behavior, which means they're getting anxious or bored. So keep an eye out for that. You'll see this a lot when you show your price. If they're not expecting the price, you'll see them pacify themselves. But I'll tell you a great story about pursed lips. I think one of the greatest indicators you can look for is someone pursing their lips. It's such a small micro expression, but it is so enormous because it indicates
What does that look like? Show me what that looks like.
just like that. I just did it.
Do it
Just
again. Oh, like that. Okay.
just a quick purse of your lips, like you just tighten your lips a little bit, and it you will mean that what you just said or what they just heard or saw made them uncomfortable or they're questioning it. Okay? It's a sign of discomfort. What you have to do as the salesperson is figure out what happened. And I use this term, the famous TSA expression. If you see something, say something. If you see something in body language and you ignore it, you're not going to make the sale because their nonverbal communication is telling you something that you need to address and figure out if it's real or not. And it all comes down to context. And like I said, this could be a whole nother podcast, but I'll give you an example of the pursed lip. So I was in a home and I was selling a rather large window job. It was about $70,000 and it was a couple in their 60s and they agreed to go forward with the job. And I sat at the kitchen table and I said, "Great, do you guys want to do the financing or do you want to pay cash with this?" And the wife said, "We're going to do the 10-year loan at 6.9%." And I saw the husband purse his lips very quickly. Now, if I was a typical average salesperson, I would have just plowed on through and did the financing and took the order and went on my merry way. But what I did was, since he pursed his lips and he wasn't addressing me, he pursed his lips after his wife said something. I said, "You know what, Mr. and Mrs. Smith? I have to go outside and check on an install and make a phone call. I'll let you guys chat about this a little more and I'll be right back." I went outside for 5 minutes. I came back in. His demeanor completely changed. He met me at the door. He put his arm around me. He's like, "Al, we changed our mind. We're going to do the 12-month no interest loan." I said, "Great, no problem." And I went through and we did the job and it came out great. Here's what could have happened if I didn't pay attention or I didn't see him purse his lips. He didn't want to embarrass his wife or talk about finances in front of me, so he kept his mouth shut. And if I went through with the sale, could have signed the contract. We could have got the loan. I could have left. He would have looked at his wife and said, "Why did you do the 10-year loan? I didn't want to do that and pay the interest." "Well, I thought that's what you wanted to do." "Holy crap, we're spending 70,000 on windows. What are we doing?" Next morning, canceled sale. That's what happens when things start to spin and you don't make that 100% comfortable for that customer. And when I saw him purse his lips, I knew he wasn't comfortable. And if I didn't address it, I don't think that sale would have stuck. So that's a good example of something as minor as that could have a huge implication on a large sale. So if you're talking to someone, whether it's in Zoom or in person, and they purse their lips, just pause for a minute. Say, "Hey, Steven, just want to make sure everything okay so far." And then he'll let you know if it's not.
So check in with them if you see something is perhaps unsettling or doesn't look right. You observe body language, check in and ask a question.
Yeah, and don't say, "Hey, Steven, I just saw you purse your lips." You don't want to do that, but you just want to say, "Hey, let me pause here for a minute. Is everything okay? How's everything sound so far?" And if something is bothering them, they're going to say it. And then they're going to feel like you're listening to them. So it has really two advantages to it.
So what if they bring up an objection, let's say, I mean, one of the things like how do you present the price and overcome any price barrier objection?
Well, there's two sides to pricing. And again, I do a whole course on this, but first of all, if you don't psychologically prepare your customer for what the price will be, and there's 7 different ways to do that, but you have to get them psychologically ready for that price. I don't care what the price is, they're going to think it's too high. They're going to get sticker shock. Not as much in B2B because quite often it's not their money and they're looking at a lot of different numbers. But if you're in a consumer situation, you're going to show them a price, whether it's $10 or $10,000, they're going to go, "Oh my God." They're not expecting it because you didn't prepare them for it. So number one, you have to prepare them for the price psychologically. And then number two is how do you present it? Keep this in mind. If you present one price, "Here's your price, Stephen, $50,000. You are now in a yes or no mindset. Yes, I'm going to do business with Allan, or no, I'm not. I don't want my customer in a yes or no mindset. I want my customer in a purchasing mindset or a decision mindset. And that's meaning showing you some options. Here are the 3 options for your roof, Stephen. Option A, option B, option C. You explain each one. Now, your mindset is not yes, yes or no, I'm going to do business with Allan. What package am I choosing to do business with Allan? And once you give the customer the choice, they feel like they're in control and I'm not just pushing a price on the customer. You should do the same thing in B2B. So when there's a team event, their team decision, they can still have choices because people don't like to just say yes or no to one number.
What if
So that would be
you're
my two
what
suggestions.
if you're selling, let's say, a car
Mhm.
Like, what do you do? Do you offer different automobiles at different price points or?
Yeah, I mean, that can be a whole plethora of things. You can have different models, the A series, the B series, the C series. You can say, well, I just want the A series. Great. Well, you can have it with these tires and this audio system or without. You can have it manual or automatic. So you can give what you'll see is like if you go online to build a car now, that's another huge pricing presentation technique is have the customer build what they
Right,
want. But you'll see three choices from the dealership, and you can choose which one you want to build, and it's usually the entry level model up to the high end model. No matter what you sell, I get pushback sometimes in this. Well, I only sell one widget and it comes in one color. Well, you know what? You got to be creative and figure out three different options for that widget.
yeah,
And you can, if you put your mind to it, you can do it. I did training for a gutter company. They sold gutters. Not a lot of choices in gutters. They're white or brown, and you can get rain guards or leaf guards or not. And they were like, "There's no way we can come up with three choices." Well, we figured out a way to come up with three choices, and their sales skyrocketed because they're
yeah.
giving people options rather than saying, "Here's your price."
Well, I find that a great piece of advice in itself, because, that's something I typically don't always do when I'm presenting a solution after a lot of discussion. But I'm going to keep that in mind and incorporate that into my process so that
Here,
there's
and
more
I'll
of an
give you another.
option. Yeah.
Yeah, Steven, I'll give you another quick example that literally just happened last week. I got a call from a company down in Newport, Rhode Island, and they wanted training on four different topics. And we went over the topics and I customized the topics. And they said, we want to do a full day's training on these four topics. So now, if I was a typical salesperson, I would say, okay, here's your four topics and here's your price. But what I did was I said, here's your four topics. That's the best package. But in case you want to not do all four, here's the price for three topics and here's the price for two topics. Well, they didn't want two or three, but
Right.
now they had pricing to say, wow, the four topics is actually a really good price. So
Right.
psychologically, I even helped them make the decision by
Right.
giving them choices they weren't even expecting.
Wow. That's a great idea. So you showed value in the four four
Exactly.
package, four
Because I
four
showed them like if you
items.
only got two, it would have been this price. So, but
Right.
if you get four, it's only $1,000 more. Now it even became more of a no-brainer for them.
How's everything you're talking about? Do you go into all detail of that in your book?
Yeah, so you'll see that I talk about the seven secrets in the book. I talk about the psychology of sales and how we got to where we are. There's some motivational stuff in the back of the book, and then the book kind of gives you, these strategies and techniques that I've been talking about today. So yeah, you'll get the details of it, and then people contact me to train their teams on how to actually do it in person, like live. We do role playing. I've even companies have even hired me to run with their sales reps to see how they're doing in front of a customer, things like that. So, but the book is gotten great reviews. It's almost got 5 stars on Amazon, and everybody likes it. So it's helped quite a few people.
Fantastic. So we'll put a link to that and to your website in the description of the video. I know you also have something else you people can sign up for to get for free, a free download. What is that? Tell us what that is.
Yeah, so I don't have it. It's on the other side of my house right now, but I have what I call a uh, an um, an action planner.
Okay.
I call it an accomplishment planner. So I do this every year. I started this. This is my fourth year doing it, and it's a planner that is made for people who hate those really big, thick books of planning where you got to spend an hour a day filling out the planner. This is a one-page planner that you fill out once a week. You do it on a Sunday, and it funnels from your weekly to-do list to what you have to accomplish that month, that quarter, and then at the top is what you want to do that year. And the beauty of it is because I designed it myself and to how I used to think is like, what do I need to do this quarter to get to this goal for the year? What do I need to do this month to accomplish this quarter? What do I need to do this week to get these things done this month? And they kind of funnel into each other. And you'll be amazed as as you fill it out every Sunday, what you're checking off. Um, and the other piece I'll end with is this was a game changer for me when I started doing this. Everyone has a to-do list, right? Everyone has a list that they write usually once a week. If I were to poll your audience, how frustrating is your to-do list? You'd probably get almost 100% of people saying it's very frustrating because I never get it all done. It's because you're setting yourself up to fail because most people put 20 to 30 things on their to-do list. Monday comes around, they do 6 of them. 6 is pretty damn good, but they still feel like shit because they didn't get 14 done. So what
Oh,
I
but
want you to
then
do
they
is,
add 6 more.
and they add 6 more, right?
I do that.
Yeah. So here's what I want you to do. Look at your to-do list on a Sunday, break it into 5 days, and take 5 things and put it on Monday, but put it on your calendar and put them on your calendar as an appointment.
Right.
Block out the time. When 10 o'clock comes and you have to send that proposal, do it. Then when you get those 5 done, you're done for the day. Don't worry about the other 15. Then Tuesday, do those 5. And obviously the things that pop up, you put on your calendar as they pop up. But once I started putting my tasks, my to-dos on my calendar, I not only were getting them done, but I felt good about myself because the 5 that I said I was going to get done on Monday, I did on Monday. I did the 5 on Tuesday, the 5 on Wednesday, and I got all those done rather than constantly looking at a to-do list that was just not getting complete. So that's something that I have in this accomplishment planner as well.
Sounds like a great tool. I'm gonna go and grab that because I just set my objectives for the year. And I have one key one that I really need to be disciplined to identify what I need to do every week. And this sounds like something that could add value. So I'm definitely going to get that. Um, so we'll put links to all that. I had one more question that I wanted to ask. If you're selling, I guess this could apply both to B2C or B2B, and you have to prospect, right? Well, I have 2 questions actually. This one, and then I have one more. How do you suggest approaching people? Like, there's that elevator pitch approach if you're trying to introduce yourself to somebody, let's say on LinkedIn, it's B2B, or you have their email somehow, or even if you're calling them. How do you, in today's world, navigate, to generate enough interest so they'll want to talk to you outside of the email or the LinkedIn message? Do you have
Well,
a best
yeah, you
practice
you
that you want
you
to
covered 3
share?
like major areas there: phone call, LinkedIn, email. There are 3
But
different
they're all the
approaches, but
same really, because it's an approach, right?
yeah, yeah. So let's look at it from a networking standpoint. People
Okay,
hate to network. Why do they hate to network? Because it's small talk. It's like you never run into people, you hardly run into people that can help you. And people are always there talking about themselves. Well, when I train people how to network properly and you introduce yourself, I don't say, "Hi, Stephen, I'm Alan. I'm a sales trainer."
right,
That's boring.
right.
Your goal is you want to get them to ask, well, tell me more. So I would say, hi, Stephen, my name's Alan. I help companies, uh, I help companies sell more and better, or I help their company's team sell more. Oh, really? How do you do that? And then I would get into it. Um, Electrician. Hi, I'm an electrician. Doesn't get you to start a conversation. Hi, I keep your lights on, or I help people XYZ. So I always say start with the problem that you solve or start with who you help in your conversations first to make you more interesting. Now, when you get to the LinkedIn part of it, you can't start with selling anyway. You just want to have to make a connection and try to have that conversation from there. LinkedIn is a completely different animal, and we're being flooded now with AI bots and with people just, hey, my name's Joe. Let's set up an appointment so I can sell you a $50,000 SaaS software program. It doesn't work that way. So start with commenting, make comments on their posts, then try to connect with them, then say hello, and then you turn that cold call into a warm call when you do that.
Good advice. This leads me to my last question because you mentioned AI. How do you see AI transforming sales and I guess networking or prospecting is the word. How do you, because we're seeing it now with the bots
Yeah.
on LinkedIn and um, so, but how do you see right now using it effectively to help you with your sales? Do you see it as a tool, or is it just something that shows that you're just like everybody else using the latest automated technology to try and generate a conversation?
Yeah, there's a lot of ways to answer that question. It's going to start with who you are as a person, as a salesperson. Like, I don't want to be known as or be perceived as an automated person. Like, I would never send out automated bots because it's just not me talking. A couple of years ago, before AI was a thing, I had a company try that for me, like actually send out messages for me to get connections. And
Right.
I stopped it within 3 weeks because they just didn't sound like me. And I was very uncomfortable with that. So I would not be the spray and pray approach of, here, let me do 100 messages a day. And if I get one, that's great. Well, yeah, but you pissed off 99 others. So I wouldn't want to do that. I see AI being very helpful from a sales standpoint in doing research and actually finding out, really from a prospecting standpoint, what your prospects are struggling with and what they're looking for. Like, you can put into AI, give me the top 10 things um, homeowners are looking for in 2024 when it comes to landscaping, let's just say. The AI is going to search the internet and find those things for you quicker than you can. And now you have 10 posts that you can do on Instagram about the top 10 things that homeowners are looking for. And then maybe those homeowners will now see you and say, oh, wow, this company can help me with this because I was thinking of the same thing. So I think if you can use AI very cleverly to find prospects and find what people's pain points are, I think it'll be very effective. But it's not going to be very helpful from a one-to-one sales standpoint because, you still need to talk to the customer. So
Yeah. Well, that's great. That's a excellent piece of advice. I'm going to use that as well. So I've really learned two things from you. I thought that was a great piece of advice, how to best utilize AI as a research tool um, to identify pain points and then find who may be experiencing that through their posts or comments. And then
mhm.
also um, how to present price, I thought was pretty great advice as well with the options. So that's great. Well, everything you said was great. So I'm definitely going to follow you and hope to have more conversations. Anything I should have asked you that I didn't that you'd like to share with our audience before we sign off?
No, that was a great interview. I do a lot of these things, and you were very thorough. So I appreciate you having me on and the time. And if anyone in your audience wants to reach out, I guess just check the show notes, and I'll send you the proper links for that stuff we spoke about, Stephen, so you can put it in
Okay.
there.
Yeah, because I was on your website. So you also do speaking events as well as training and coaching.
Yes, yeah,
Yes.
I really enjoy. I've done last year, I think I did 5 or 6 keynotes. I've got 2 keynotes coming up before the end of the month
Nice.
for sales companies and their annual sales retreats and things like that. So a lot of fun. I love it, and try to make it a lot of fun for the audience too.
Great. Well, Alan, it was great talking to you. I learned a few things, as I mentioned, and I'm going to definitely grab that planning uh, worksheet. Thank you again for joining me. For those that are new to the channel, uh, I invite you to subscribe and turn on notifications to get news of new videos. Thank you all for listening. Thanks again, Alan, and we'll talk again soon.
Thanks, Stephen.